Hello everyone and welcome to episode 8 of the Mind Body Soul Transformation Podcast. I am mind blown really that this is dropping on the 8th of the 8th on what is an 888 year. So for those of you that are not deep into the rabbit warrens of all things spirituality and Lionsgate portal, the 8th of August is our Lionsgate portal every year. This year it happens to be also occurring in our 8th year, given that 2024 adds up to the number 8. And so there is a lot of talk around the potency and power of this time, which peaks on the 8th of August, and the potentials around this to not only bring us closer to the spiritual side, our existence and our spiritual connections, and the idea that the veil between our 3D reality or our human reality and the spirituality side of things is much thinner on these days, but also the potential there to really be a pivotal point in the transformation of the world, humanity, and our future direction. And so to have my 8th episode dropping on this day fills me with excitement. The Lionsgate portal is actually related to the star Sirius, which is believed to be the solar system sun or our spiritual sun. I would encourage those of you that this is piquing some interest in to go and explore this with someone that is much more in depth in knowledge in this space. But basically it is the point at which this star is closest to the Earth, in alignment with the Earth, and it's believed to bring about great potential around manifesting our dreams, around advancing our own spiritual growth. And actually the date and the idea of the Lionsgate portal and the peak of this Sirius energy dates back to ancient Egyptian times, where it was correlated or coincided each year with the flooding of the Nile, and was therefore felt to bring about abundance, prosperity, fertility of the lands, and flow-on benefits of that for the ancient Egyptian people. And so the energy is all around abundance and prosperity, and having the ability to tap into this power and call that into our lives. So let's start on that high note. This episode is going to be all about dualities. For those of you that follow me on Instagram, I jumped on earlier last week, this week, I don't know, the last week's been a bit of a blur, and just touched on how I was feeling after dropping episode 7, feeling a bit of guilt and shame around this idea of wanting to call more light, love and joy into my life, whilst at the same time there is so much heartbreak and devastation happening around the world. And I spoke a bit about how I'm really being guided by my own intuition, but also by the teachers and mentors that I am tapping into right now, the importance of holding our light and holding our vibration through what is a really challenging time, and is likely to continue to be a challenging time over the coming months. And that's really hard for me, and I really wanted to dive in a little bit more into that in today's episode, around this duality, around trying to find this balance, around the importance of holding the light and acknowledging the dark, and some other duality kind of energies within our life, potentially tapping into the idea of masculine and feminine energies as well, because that's, I think, another big part of this shift, this change, this balancing that we are currently deep into. And it's really hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel at this point in time. I had actually already recorded an episode 8. I was ahead of the game. And what I had recorded was all about my Reiki level 2 training that I completed 1 week ago, 2 weeks ago, I don't know. The last couple of weeks have just absolutely been a blur. Anyway, I completed the other weekend. Truly magical experience. And I might still drop that episode in the future, or I might re-record it. What I found as I was editing over the last week is some of it felt a bit too sacred in terms of the experiences that I shared. And I think there's a part of me that's feeling like I need to keep that to myself for now. And the other part was I just kept running into technology issues when I was trying to edit the podcast. And yes, we're in a Mercury retrograde and that may be the issue, but I also think there might be a message there just trying to say, hey, Donna, this isn't it for at least this week, if not maybe at all. So I'm not going to touch on that too much today. As I said, we're going to jump into this idea of duality, and I'm trying to lean in more to my spiritual practices around this podcast and around the recording to help guide me with what we should be speaking about and how I should be presenting this information. And I actually got some of that guidance in my Reiki session the other weekend from two beautiful women who both saw some changes I need to be making with this podcast about how I can have the biggest impact in sharing these messages with you all. And one of those is bringing Reiki into the podcast, which I've done before my session today, both to the room and with myself. But what I've added in this morning, because I am trying to lean more onto these spiritual practices, is my oracle decks. And I shared on Monday on Instagram again an oracle card pull of the weekend, and actually the card that came up for this was the sacred action, and that was a message for anyone who felt like they needed a message or who aligned with the message that I shared on Instagram on Monday. Interestingly, this card came out again. So what I've done before starting this podcast today is get some guidance. I came into this knowing I wanted to talk about the dualities, the light and the dark, masculine and feminine. But I wanted some guidance from the cards about how best to tap into these energies and what in those areas I really needed to present. And I pulled 5 cards. I wasn't expecting 5 cards. Interestingly, the same card that came out on Monday came out again. That was my first card that came out, Sacred Action, which is exactly what I want to talk about and how we can be turning up right now to help the world, to help each other, even to help the planet. So that's it. The last card that came out was actually duality. It still blows my mind the way the universe has your back and sends you the messages to let you know you're on the right track. So this gorgeous card, duality, which says many meanings and misunderstanding. And I want to start by actually just reading the excerpt of this card from the book, because I think that might be a beautiful place to start for today's podcast. And then we can dive into my musings around this topic, where I'm struggling, what I'm trying to do. I do want to say before I get started is this is an area that I'm grappling with. As with lots of the things I've shared on the podcast so far, I'm turning up here sharing with you what I'm learning, what I'm thinking about, what I'm reflecting on. And that, I even think back to 12 months ago. I remember doing a Lionsgate meditation 12 months ago, and think about my transformation in that 12 months, both in terms of my life, the changes I've made, the growth I've made spiritually and in other ways, but also the things that I've changed my mind on, that I'm more open to now. Like, that in itself is huge. And so when I share these podcasts, I want to also share my fallibility in it all, that I am very much early on in this journey. I am very much still learning. There are so many beautiful, amazing resources out there for you. And I've been feeling a bit of a call, and it just popped in again, to put together a little bit of a newsletter to share those resources that I'm tapping into each week for those of you that might be interested. So I will get working on that. But I say all of that to just say that what I share today, I may change my mind on in 6 months' time, 12 months' time, 5 years' time. But I share it because this is where I'm at. This is what I'm thinking on. This is what I'm grappling with. And some of this I really am grappling with. I don't know the best way to be turning up right now. And I'm trying to follow my intuition. I'm trying to follow the guidance of others, whilst I'm also grappling with guilt and shame and any other energies that I might be feeling around not showing up, screaming and fighting and doing all the things that I'm also torn about what I should be doing. Anyway. So, duality, let me read that from the book. Before I do that though, I just want to share the 3 other cards that came up. One was sensuality. I think the message here though, if for those of you that are watching the video, one of the words underneath sensuality, which is this gorgeous picture of a woman with a tiger, is feminine wisdom. I do think that that's the message there for me around this podcast, is sharing a bit about the feminine energies, divine feminine energies, dark feminine energies, and how I think we're trying to balance our masculine and feminine energies internally and externally right now. Just sharing some ideas around that and what that means. The next one was precognition, which was a 13 card. Also says psychic ability, future vision. I think the message for me for this podcast was around a future vision of this world and holding that future vision in helping me and you potentially know how to show up right now. If we can hold on to what our future vision is, that can help us know how we need to be showing up right now. And the last one was deep emotions, which also has come up for me twice this week as well, including in Monday's card pull that I did for, can't get it out from under the microphone, that I did for Instagram. Deep emotions, unknown feelings, past life influences. And then I think for this podcast, in terms of this card coming out, it's just around how much emotion there is bubbling to the surface right now. Again, both internally on a global scale, and how we can reckon with that, find our way through that from a place of love and light that doesn't add to the division and hatred and violence that is currently being perpetuated within the world. So a lot to dive into, but let me start by reading about the duality card from the Priestess of Light Oracle guidebook. So it says, the disciple priestess Magdalena sits at the entrance to a cave, a place of retreat. The skull on her lap indicates her spiritual side, whereas the open book represents her scholarly and educated side. Her red dress and white sash beneath her are symbols of the divine feminine and divine masculine combined. Your life is also full of dualities. You are at the same time masculine and feminine, physical and ethereal, fully human and fully divine. This card encourages you to explore all of these true yet diverse aspects of yourself. It may feel strange to dive into new spiritual practices if you've always been physically oriented. An active masculine approach to life may feel unnatural if you've traditionally been in a more reflective and feminine mode. But these deeper layers of yourself now long to be expressed. In opening up to these experiences, you will tap important, previously unknown strengths and talents and widen the scope of your spiritual, your personal, and even your professional life. Finally, there is a message of warning in this card regarding distorted perceptions. Magdalena, or Mary Magdalene, has been historically misunderstood, called a prostitute when she was actually an educated landowner. Be conscious of the ways you may be misunderstood, and be courageous in your intention to live your own life and stand in your truth. Also be aware of any misunderstandings you carry about yourself. Any limiting or judgmental notions must be set aside. A clear understanding of your truth requires you to embrace your divine nature, the most gracious and powerful part of your many-faceted, sparkling identity. And for those of you that might be interested, the affirmation for this card is, I am willing to explore the many wonderful sides of my nature. I am open to understanding the depth of my truth and expressing that to others. I love it. Love, love, love it. And I just still can't believe that this card came out when the topic for today was absolutely going to be duality. So there you go. Let's dive into where I wanted to start. And that is exactly what I shared the other day on Instagram. And the thing I'm grappling with right now so much is trying to hold the light and not let the guilt and shame of that stop me and pull me down into a lower vibration. And so there's a lot I want to touch on here. I think I want to start by just acknowledging the chaos, the devastation, the violence, the brutality. There's so many words of events that are happening all across our globe right now. It brings me to tears just thinking about it. it brings me to tears every day when I open up my phone and I see that it's continuing to happen because, well, just because it's absolutely devastating and heartbreaking that any humans could treat each other in the way that we are treating each other right now. And because it's still going, and for at least a few months now, 2 months maybe, I've been really holding on to this hope of this is the point at which we're going to change. This is the point at which we are going to wake up to the fact that we cannot continue down this path of destroying each other, devaluing life in all its forms, human, animals, all life forms on this earth, including our earth itself. And that's where we are right now. And we are, in my opinion, in the worst of it across all of those areas. And so every day when I'm waking up into a world, and I know I'm not alone in this, when we're waking up into a world where that's what we're witnessing, we pick up our phone and we are witnessing the most horrific things that no human should even have to witness, let alone be experiencing. It's really hard to hold on to that light and to hold on to that hope and to believe that these events are happening to cause us as a global society, as humanity, to wake the hell up. Sorry for the language, but we need to wake up. And to really struggle to understand why it is taking so long to do. Be so deeply frustrated by the fact there are so many voices screaming for this to stop right now across the planet. People are demanding this to stop, and our governments, the powers that be, are not listening to us. And as someone that has always believed or wanted to believe that the systems and structures that we operated in were there to support us, that in itself is hard to grapple with. And that's kind of what a message that I've been trying to put out there and get you to think about in the last 7-8 episodes of this podcast, is maybe what we've been presented our whole life isn't actually the reality, and these people in power are actually not here to be representatives of what we want this world to look like, our countries to look like, our communities to look like, humanity to look like. And there's a piece here about taking back our power, and I know I've spoken about that on previous episodes. And so that leads us to how do we take back our power? Because right now, people are protesting, people are screaming, people are sharing everything they possibly can on their social media to make other people aware of what's happening, to try pull people along, to wake us all up to what is happening, both in terms of just facing and acknowledging the truth of what is happening, but also the fact that the people that are meant to be able to stop this, that are meant to be able to speak up and stop this from happening and support our voices in that, are not listening to us. And so how do we take back our power? And I spent the better part of the first half of this year full of rage, full of heartbreak, full of devastation. I still feel all of those things, and that's what I was putting out into the world. And that was a little bit because I just wasn't seeing that across so much of my existence, my social media feeds, the conversations I'm having in the workplace, outside of work, all across my reality. It was like we had our heads in the sand. We were ignoring what was happening in other parts of the world to other humans because it wasn't on our doorstep, because it wasn't directly affecting us. And I still know that's happening. And that's where my guilt and shame comes in, is that I don't want people to think that I'm ignoring it. So there's that. I spent 6 months, maybe longer, and I have done this about many other things as well, but one particular global conflict right now is what I was sharing a lot of. And then I got to this point in my spiritual journey of realizing and learning that part of this next shift is bringing up our vibration, coming from a place of love and light and compassion and all of those things that we need to make this shift. And that there was a part of me by coming from how I was before, by sharing what I was before that was instilling fear, that was reinforcing division, that was taking a side. And this shift that we need, that I hope we're in right now, needs to be less about division, about right versus wrong, and needs to be much more anchored in a balance there. And the hard part there is understanding what our role is, each as individuals, because it's probably going to be different, in getting us all to that place of balance. And as I said, what I could see is I was very heavily landing on one side in how I was turning up, but also my experience of how I was turning up and what I was willing to let myself experience whilst all of those things were going on. And so the shift that I've made personally in how I'm turning up online and how I'm turning up on this podcast and how I'm turning up in my day-to-day is trying to bring more light into the world. And the reason I'm struggling with that so much is I've been so angry at all the people that are happy to just go about their lives and ignore what is happening in these conflicts right now, in the riots that are happening, the destruction that we do to our planet every day, and just act as if there's nothing that we can do about it, or not even acknowledge it, because it's not our problem, right? Not affecting me directly. Is it going to affect the future generations that are here to come? Is it deeply affecting so many life forms right now? Yes. And so I've been so angry that now when I shift how I'm turning up and trying to be very careful in the messages I put out there, not being ones that reinforce fear, not being ones that reinforce division, I feel like that might be received by others as me ignoring the problems, or some like toxic positivity of some description. And the truth is, don't know. I really don't know which the most powerful path for us to choose right now is in terms of how to stop this and how to take our power back to stop this devastation. I don't know. So I'm trying to come back to that future vision that I hold for this world, that I know many other people are holding for this world right now, of love, of peace, of balance, of unity, of freedom, of equity and justice. And if I can come from that place, if I can turn up in the world from that place, if we can turn up in the world from that place, then that is what we attract in, that's what we manifest in. That is what we're open to receiving and being and existing within. That is how we create that reality. And being new to that idea of and concept of energy vibrations and manifesting and needing to manifest from a place of what you want in terms of turning up in life in a way that is in alignment with what you want, makes it really hard when you're then grappling with these really big existential, literally life and death problems, to have full, complete faith that that is the right way to show up right now. And so I'm trying to walk a line right now of still sharing some of the realities of the world on Instagram in particular and in my conversations that I have, but being very careful in how I present that information and the language I might put around that information, to say I'm not sharing this to create fear. I'm not sharing this to bring more hate to the world. I'm not sharing this to add to division. I'm sharing this so that we are aware, so that we know what we're fighting for, and fighting for from a place of now let's show up from what we want. And I think all of us will walk a different path here, and that is totally fine. We all have different roles to play in this shift. So I am in full support and love and gratitude for everyone that is actively turning up, sacred action, the card, from a place where their intention is to bring about a better world for everybody. For everybody. And that everybody part is probably the hardest part of all of this to grapple with right now, because there are people doing things in the world right now that it's impossible to accept. That it is almost impossible to see the humanity in those people at all. That it is almost impossible to look at those people, see what they are doing, and have any degree of love and empathy for them. And this is the part that I'm still really trying to sit with, grapple with, and reflect on when I'm unable to do this, is they're human too. And so if I'm fighting for all of those things I said, that future vision of the world that I want that for them. I want them to wake up and see we're all human. I want them to one day feel forgiveness from the world for what they've done for their own reasons. And possibly more importantly, to realize what they've done, to realize the errors in their way, and to find a way to forgive themselves too. Because until we can do that for the dark parts of ourselves, of others, of the world, of power, of our leaders, we can't make this shift, because it will always be an us and them, a black and white, a right and wrong. And we need to get out of that. We need to find the balance. I think I have to believe that the events that are happening right now in the world, and probably some that are to come, both natural events and humanity-caused events, are here to let us do this. And that in itself is hard to wrap my head around, because why should people have to be experiencing what they are, to be dying the way they are, to be losing loved ones the way they are? Why should animals be losing their homes because we're cutting down their trees? All of these things. Why should these things, or burning their forests, or whatever it is, destroying their oceans with rubbish and pollution? Why should beings, the planet, have to suffer because we didn't wake up soon enough? Why does it have to reach absolute tipping and breaking point to pull us out of the path we're on right now, where we're so far from creating that reality of what we all truly believe we all desire, except for those maybe that are trying to keep us in control? And this is why this podcast is so important to me. This is why showing up on Instagram the way I am is so important to me, because what I'm trying to show you all is my journey, is the things that I'm grappling with, is how the work we do on ourselves has a ripple effect out into the world. If we're able to find this balance within, if we are able to love the dark parts of ourselves, our shadow aspects, the parts of ourselves that might fill us with guilt and shame, if we're truly able to love them, then we will find it easier to shine that love and light out into the world in the places where it actually needs it the most. But as long as we are fighting with those dark parts of ourselves, resisting those, projecting shame and guilt and hate and division onto those, that's what we're going to see outside of ourselves. It is all a mirror. And that is why leaning more into showing up the way that I'm trying to show up, of holding the vibration, of holding the energies, of holding the drivers of the world I want to live in. I want my daughter to live in. I want every single person that I love. I want all of humanity, all of our animals and our planet to exist in. So I'm trying to show up from that place. And I do not get this right every day. I do not get this right every moment of every day. But I do try and reflect on that. And I do try and better understand that. I do try and show those parts of me that show up differently to that, in frustration, in anger, in division, in hate, in whatever, compassion and grace, in trying to understand that. Try and do better next time. because that's all we can do. And I think that's why I struggled so much after last week's episode, where I turned up and said, I want more joy in my life. I need to believe I'm worthy of joy. All of these things, which were so true, so beautiful. And yes, I deserve joy. Every single person in this world deserves joy. And one group's experience does not preclude me from still going after and pursuing that for all of those reasons. Just because it is all of our born right to experience the very most beautiful things in life. Every single one of us. And I hope and I believe and I'm holding the faith that if I can start to cultivate more of all of these things in my life, then I can call more of that into this world. For those of you that might be interested in exploring this particular topic more, particularly the idea of around a shift that we might be in, the Lionsgate portal, the opportunity here for a new beginning for humanity, I would encourage you to go and explore this a little bit more. For me, YouTube has been just a great place to come across the information that I needed, that I feel aligned with, and can dive a little bit deeper into the topics that I stumble across. And there is a lot out there right now about a transition from 3D to 5D, just to give you some keywords to look into, which is also aligned with a new earth shift. And so us moving into this new earth, and how there will be waves of us, and how it's some of our responsibilities to hold the light through what is coming for humanity, to wake us up, to pull us ultimately all into this new earth. And so I do think there's more chaos and crisis and heartbreak and devastation to come. And again, I do not say that to instill fear in anybody. I think it's coming to wake us all up. But for those of us that can wake up now and start on our own journey now, not only can we help those that are going to struggle through what's to come, possibly more than us, it is also our job to hold that light, to light the path for others to find their way and find their role in getting us all the future that there is in store for us and for the generations to come. Another big part of this balancing, and for those of you that do a dive into this, you will come across this as well, is this idea of us as a planet, us individuals, us as humanity, balancing out our masculine and feminine energies, in particular our divine masculine and feminine energies. And I probably want to do a whole podcast on this topic alone, but I do want to touch on it today because it speaks to what I'm talking about, of this idea of duality and trying to find our balance in this space. And I have spoken very briefly on the idea of masculine versus feminine energies in the past, and how in different aspects of my life I've been pulled out of alignment of that balance, or pulled more into one energy over the other, and that has affected how I've been received and how I've been able to function, but also it's been affected by what's expected of me. And the reality is, as a global society, we've existed in very heavy masculine energy for a long time now. And for those of us that are in this space of exploring these ideas, and possibly even those that aren't conscious to this yet, we can see a shift happening. There is a feminine rising happening, and that is all part of this new earth shift and us shifting into our future timelines and realities of the world we're meant to be living in. And as I've come to understand this, it's very similar to what I've just been speaking about in terms of our light and our dark. It's much more about finding a balance of these energies than one versus the other. So it's not so much that we need to, as a global society, all lean into our feminine and just turn up from that place, because we need both. And we need both in balance within ourselves and outside of ourselves. Within ourselves, to give us the most flexibility to be able to show up in the world and achieve what we need to do and honor and love them. And in our connections and relationships and leadership and every other way we show up in the world, we need a balance of both. And it will likely be that in some situations you may be leaning into more one energy and someone else might be leaning into more the other energy to balance it out. but how can we bring those energies into balance and union within ourselves? Because once we're able to do that, then we're able to create more balance of those energies into the world. It's all the same. Just another little idea around this, and I'm definitely not well versed on this enough to dive into right now, but in terms of balancing these energies and this new earth shift and the masculine and feminine, divine masculine, divine feminine energies, my understanding is a big part of this balancing, a big part of this shift is twin flames coming into union. I don't think I'm going to dive any more into that right now, but if that resonated with you in any way, then that's another area I would absolutely encourage you to go and explore and see if there's something there for you that would help you understand your own experience. So I guess on this topic, I just wanted to give a bit of an example of what I mean by masculine and feminine energies and why both are important, why we can't have one without the other, despite the fact we've been trying to exist in that kind of reality for so long now. So when we're talking about our divine masculine energies, it's the essence or the energies along the lines of structure or the container in which something is held. It is logic. It is being goal orientated and having discipline and being decisive and being grounded and focused. It is being the pursuer, the go-getter, going after things and really being driven, and it's being protective. You can see how much of those energies are embedded into all aspects of our life, both in terms of what is valued in society, how we're expected to turn up, how we expect others to turn up, what we look for in ourselves, what we expect of ourselves. So I want you to sit with that and sit with how does the masculine energy show up in my life? How is that helpful and beneficial to me? Because again, we need all of the energies. Where am I out of balance here? Where do I have some aspect of that energy that might need to be healed? Is there something in those essences of that energy that I just described that doesn't sit right with you? Are you too much of one of those things, or do you really struggle with one of those aspects? And I've spoken on a previous episode about how in my leadership management role, I've really lent a lot more into that masculine energy and showing up in that way, and how it's really affected my connections with people. And I know why I've done that. And I know we exist in a world that expects exactly that kind of energy, outward expression of leadership. And that's what is valued. But it absolutely, on reflection, hasn't helped me in so many situations. And it has helped me in some. So there's that. There, for me personally, there are times where I lean too much into showing up that way, and it deeply, negatively impacts my connections with people and therefore my ability to actually lead. And then there's other parts of that where I really struggle. And, some of that is like that follow through. Like I'm quite good at the ideas and the creativity side of stuff, and we'll get to that with the feminine energy shortly. But actually sitting down and following through with that in some areas, I really struggle with. And so that's an area that I need to look at and understand, what is that resistance there? What aspect of that is blocking me? How do I heal that so that when I need to tap into that follow through, that pursuer, that go-getter energy, can do that without so much resistance. Then we've got our feminine energies, and this is all around being open and receiving and creativity. It is freedom, it is feeling, it is being playful and vulnerable, it is absolutely being compassionate and caring, it is our connections, it is being magnetic, and as I've already touched on, that idea of receiving. So masculine was that pursuing, feminine was that receiving energy. And all such beautiful energies, but need a safe space and container to be held within. So within us, we need the structure, that container to hold those feminine aspects of us, because otherwise we're just not grounded. We're all over the place. But also in our connections with other people, in our relationships with other people, we need people to hold that space, to hold that container, so that when we're turning up from that feminine energy, we can fully be in it and not be feeling like we're not being held in that way. And so we're needing to just be in that very much structured point of view, or that contained logic point of view. Again, if you're interested in this, or if this is resonating at all, I'd encourage you to dive in. I think there's a lot in this space that could benefit you just as an individual, but also in your relationships, and understanding why the current structures of our relationships are really hard for us to thrive in and to truly be in the energies that we need to be in, because of all of the demands on us, but also because of how we are showing up in our relationships. Lastly, before we just wrap up this episode, I wanted to touch, so that's all divine feminine energies that I've just spoken to. There is this concept of dark feminine energies as well. And, you know, we started the episode with this idea of Mary Magdalene and all the stories about her. And there's so much here to dive into, which is why I know I will need to do another episode on this topic at some point in time. But our dark feminine energies are really those aspects of our feminine nature that have been shamed and punished, and sometimes resulted in us losing our lives for centuries. But how important those energies actually are, and how, again, structures and systems have put ideologies out there to make these energies something that they're not, to put a negative lens over them when they are a natural part of our being, both as masculines and feminines in the world, but we've all got both energies within us. And so I wanted to speak to those just very briefly to, again, just give you an idea of where you're at with these, how you feel around these energies, and what work you might need to be doing to try and find that balance for yourself, and starting to undo some of the internalized perceptions of these energies that you might have brought in over your life, or even been born with. So our dark feminine energies are things around sensuality, seduction, sacred sensuality, passion, magic, fierce compassion and rage, the chaos of creation and destruction, that transformation, that death and rebirth kind of concept. All of those are part of these dark feminine energies that we're scared of, that we've been shamed out of, that society puts labels around, and that we need to take back power over and reclaim as part of our authentic feminine natures, be it you are masculine, feminine, or non-binary presenting human. We all need to work through these energies and find what needs healing, how we need to balance them, and how we reclaim these energies and be able to turn up in the world with every essence of our being able to be tapped into, so that every essence of our beings can be accepted in the world, so that we can bring into this new earth the very best of humanity in balance. Just as I finished, that was 5505, which is all a change number. So I think that's, wow, there's 55s everywhere for me right now. That is all I've got for today. I think that's where I'm going to wrap up. I hope this episode was helpful for you. I know we went deep and far-reaching and big picture, but it's really what I was being called for. When I started this podcast, I knew part of its purpose was to try and get some of these messages out there to people that wouldn't currently be tapping into them. And I don't know how many of you are still along for this ride 8 episodes in, but I hope some of you are, because I hope the messages that I share here help you in your own journey, are helping to wake you up, are help you find the light, and will help you in what might be to come, and in finding our path through to the exciting aspects of what is to come. So, with all of that, I am sending you all of my love and light. I would love to hear your thoughts on some of these ideas that I've shared today, some of the things I'm grappling with, what your thoughts are on what we can be doing to make this world the place we want it to be. I would genuinely love to hear from you. Until next week, wishing you all the most abundant, prosperous, magical Lionsgate portal. May you call in everything that your heart and soul desires and deserves. And I will see you next week. Thank you, everyone. Bye.